If you are looking for a small electric car on a budget, then this is probably going to be on your shopping list already. It's the BYD Atto 3, and in this review, I'm going to tell you why it should stay on your list and maybe even jump up a few spots. G'day, I'm Matt. This channel is called The Right Car, where I help you find the right car for your needs. This could be it if you are looking for a compact SUV that's fully electric, around $50,000, has some interesting interior quirks, a long warranty, and a pretty nice drive experience. Stay tuned. I'm impressed with this thing. You might be too. The standard equipment doesn't change whether you choose the entry-level model or the top spec version, so the same stuff on both grades. LED lighting on the outside, headlights, daytime running lights and tail lights. Plus you've also got 18-inch alloy wheels as standard. Inside there's a 12.8-inch touchscreen media system which can actually rotate, which is kind of a cool party trick, and there's some nice interior trim elements in there as well. You also get an electric boot and sat-nav as standard as well. So it does tick a lot of the boxes for new car buyers who are looking for, well, a decent amount of tech in a high-tech kind of car. If you are looking for a small electric SUV, then you've probably already checked out the MG ZS EV. If you haven't, hit the link at the top of your screen there. I'll tell you all about it in my review of that car. I was pretty impressed with it. I don't think that spending extra for the long range model necessarily is the best choice there, because the entry-level versions are still very, very value packed, and they offer a pretty decent entry point into EV motoring. So if that's what you're looking for, maybe check it out because it's a good alternative. Another one you might also want to consider is the MG4, which is going to be budget priced, and it's more of a hatchback than an SUV, but it does have a whole lot going for it. Long warranty, nice interior trim and finish, decent size as well. And if you aren't into the whole SUV thing, then it could be a really good option for you. Speaking of not being into the whole EV SUV thing, why not check out the GWM Aura? It's a little hatchback. It looks a little bit retro, like a Beetle style thing. Hit the link up there and you'll take a look at my review of that car. I was pretty impressed with it, and I'm just about to drive it on the road for the first time. I drove it on a private road at the pre-launch event a couple of months ago now. So stay tuned. I'll be doing an updated review of that shortly as well. The Atto 3 is definitely one of those small SUVs that hits the spot in terms of sizing. It's just on 4.4 meters long, so not necessarily too hard to park, not necessarily too big to live with, not necessarily too small to live with either. I'll show you the back seat in a sec, just to prove that point, but first, let's check out the boot. As I mentioned, all versions come with an electric tailgate. People tend to love those, so that's nice to see that it's standard. And when it comes to boot space, it might not look like a whole lot of room in here, but you need to know that this boot floor is adjustable, so you can keep it at the high height if you've got heavy items to load in, or lower it down and you'll end up with 440 litres of cargo capacity, which is pretty good for an SUV of this size. In fact, it's one of the best boot spaces you can get at this kind of money. Now, speaking of under the boot floor, just put it back up there. There's no spare wheel. Most EVs don't come with a spare wheel. That's to be expected. And I know that there are a lot of people out there who say, well, that doesn't suit Australia. Well, that's just how it is, because they need to save weight to give you extra driving range. So maybe an EV is not going to be the right car for you if you need a spare wheel, but there is a repair kit in here if you need it, and a couple of charger options as well. So that's nice to see. Yeah. Not too bad in terms of boot space, and that stays up there if you need it to as well, which is nice. This is different. Different, very different. I don't know whether I love it. It does have a lot going on in terms of the shapes and the designs of this interior. Obviously, let's just start at the dash, right? So you've got these weird sort of sculptured elements, this strange material finish that runs across the dashboard here, which kind of feels, I don't know what that feels like. I've never felt anything really like that in my life. It runs over to the doors here, and also the door handles are a bit quirky. They're little levers on top of these circles on top of the door cards, so that's a bit strange as well. Let's talk about the screen next. So this screen, you've probably seen it on TikTok or Insta or whatever. It can rotate, which is kind of a cool party trick. And I actually like that because I think I prefer having portrait style, especially if I'm using nav, which I have been using in this car. So it's an interesting thing anyway. So it does take a little bit of getting used to in terms of the controls on the screen. They are well, there's plenty of controls. There's a home button, which is nice to see, and then another home button, so you can actually swipe through different elements of the screen as well. Your car controls are all on here as well, and so is your air conditioning controls. Now, if you've noticed over the last, say, 45 videos on this channel, I don't really like it when a car has air conditioning controls all through the screen, but there are some elements that you can adjust from down here next to this quirky little shifter. You can turn the fan on or off, but that's about it. So you want to have to make sure that you set at the right temperature before you set off on your little trip. Now, below there, let's talk about the air conditioning vents in particular. So you've got these little toggles, I guess, on the side, which will open or close the vents themselves. Then you can adjust them like this. These are really weird. I like them, but they're weird. Now, when it comes to storage, you've got a pair of cup holders here. They're staggered heights, and if you have a really small cup, it might not fit in either of them very well. You've got a wireless phone charger here, an extra storage section underneath that wireless phone charger as well, and you've got a big padded armrest here, which is a covered center console bin too, which goes deep in underneath those cup holders as well. And obviously there's the other party trick in the cabin. They've got these 3 little strings on the door that basically sound like a guitar. Watch Richard Berry from Cars Guide's review. He did a really good intro. I loved it, where he was playing that as a guitar. It's kind of cool. Bottle holders in there, and in terms of the seat comfort, it's pretty good, and unlike some of the other more affordable Chinese SUVs, you actually do get reach adjustment and rake adjustment for the steering wheel too. So I've been able to get into a comfortable position for someone who is my size. Let's see if it's comfortable in the back for someone my size. I've mentioned my size a couple of times already, so I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot. This seat is set for my position, and I've got lots of knee room. I've got a decent amount of foot room, not heaps. Good headroom though for a car of this size with a big panoramic sunroof, which comes standard as well. It is a pretty accommodating space in terms of adult occupant space. If you do have kids, there are ISOFIX points in the window seats and 3 top tether points too. And kids will be kept pretty happy back here because there are directional air vents, again with that kind of quirky control setup. And you've got a USB-A and USB-C port down there as well. And also, I really like these multiple map pocket options on the seat backs. You can put a couple of devices and then maybe, I don't know, some magazines or a snack or whatever in down here. It just makes things a lot easier to live with for people who are going to spend a bit of time in the back seat. Now, other storage, flip down armrest, cup holders, which is nice to see. And then you've got those same stringed side pockets in the doors as well. Yep, this is going to be a pretty suitable family car option or just a second car option depending on what you need it for. But I like the fact that there's also a really flat floor, so you can fit 3 adults across here at a pinch, as long as they're not huge. It's nice. Just like the equipment list, it doesn't matter which version of the BYD Atto 3 you choose, you get the same electric motor under the bonnet with the same outputs. You'll see them on your screen now. It is a pretty perky little motor, and it does have definitely enough power and torque for this sort of application. It's got a single speed transmission, and it's also got front wheel drive, so it makes it a little bit different to some of those other models out there like the Cupra Born, for example. If you choose the entry-level version, you're getting a 50 kilowatt hour battery pack or thereabouts, which means about 345 kilometers of EV driving range on the WLTP standard. That's the claim anyway. And then if you choose the long range version, it's about 10 kilowatt hours larger battery pack, so 60-ish, and you can also see on screen now you get 420 Ks of EV driving range on that WLTP measurement. So not bad at all, definitely lives up to that extended range idea. Bit weird though that under the bonnet you've got all this space, but there's no front storage area like some other EVs have. You got the choice of AC or DC charging as you would expect. So on top, you've got a 7 kilowatt AC maximum charging rate, which makes it a full charge overnight, for example. If you do end up plugging into a regular plug, it's going to be about a day, and you do get an emergency charge cable from BYD as standard, which is nice to see. Now, if you need to do fast charging, maybe on a road trip, DC down the bottom there, and if you find a 50 kilowatt charger, it should take about an hour to do 10 to 80%, whereas if you find a 100 or 150 kilowatt charger, it'll do it a bit quicker because the charging rates, as you'll see on your screen now, are capable of taking 70 or 80 kilowatts. So you're looking at something in the region of 40 minutes for 10 to 80% from a DC fast charger. Let me just say, this isn't a sporty small electric car to drive. If you are looking for that kind of thing, hit the link up there and watch my Cupra Born review. It's a fantastic little electric car that feels like a hot hatch almost to drive. Very enjoyable. It is a bit more money than this car though. And on the theme of it not being a super sporty SUV, it doesn't have the best tires. They're called Batmans, which is kind of cool, but yeah, they certainly aren't a Continental or a Pirelli or something like that. So if you are looking for maybe pretty simple and relatively affordable performance upgrade for your BYD Atto 3, then maybe a better set of rubber might be a good investment. So there are two different modes that you can choose when it comes to the steering in this car. There's comfort or sport. I personally have gone for the sport mode because I find that the comfort mode, especially in day-to-day urban driving, can be a bit hard to guess what's going to happen next. By that I mean it just doesn't have the same sort of directness and responsiveness that it does in sport mode, and it also isn't as easy to deal with when you're doing, say, 3-point turns like I'll do right now, just for example. So in the comfort mode, it just feels like it's not as quick to turn the wheel, whereas this just has a bit more weight, and in sport mode, it just feels a bit more enjoyable to drive. It is a little bit noisy on the open road, or just in terms of exterior or external road noise and other vehicle noise intrusions. What about ride comfort then? Well, it's pretty good in this car. A lot of electric cars do have a low center of mass because they've got the batteries all underneath the body of the car, and that does mean that you do tend to get a pretty good ride. They're also heavy, and heavier cars tend to ride a bit better. And this car does have a pretty decent level of comfort on offer to the occupants. I've been driving it just by myself for the time I've been driving this car. I've just been spending time by myself in this car, no family errands or anything like that, and it's been pretty enjoyable in terms of the ride comfort and control and the quality of the ride as well. So just driving around some of these back streets in my area where some of the roads aren't perfect, and I think it's perfectly acceptable in terms of the way that it behaves itself. I will say though that, like I've mentioned, this isn't a sporty SUV, and it can feel just a little bit roly-poly in corners if you do go a little bit quicker. So it's front-wheel drive, electric motor, fair amount of power and torque. So yeah, you can have some of those moments where it will scrabble a little bit at the front axle and try and find more grip than is available to it. As I mentioned, better set of tires might help that. But I think that it's also pretty tractable in the way that you can apply the power in this car. It's definitely not falling short when it comes to power either. If you put your foot down, yeah, it does the EV thing where it pushes you back in your seat. Look, it's not the fastest little electric vehicle, but it's not claiming to be either. And that's not what this car is all about. The official number is on your screen now for the Atto 3. And if you're wondering what I've achieved across a mix of driving over a couple of days in this car, you see that figure on your screen now. I was pretty impressed with that. What do you think? The Atto 3 comes with a 5-star ANCAP safety rating based on 2022 testing, and it does have all the tech you would expect to achieve that kind of rating, including autonomous emergency braking, lane keeping assistance, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and it's also got a rear AEB system that can detect and brake for pedestrians, which is pretty neat. As well as that, you've got a surround view camera system as standard on both grades, which is really nice to see, and it's a really high quality camera setup as well. And you can activate it while you're driving too. It also comes with front and rear parking sensors as standard, plus you've got 7 airbags, including a front center airbag to prevent head collisions in the event of a side impact. So it's packed with safety tech. BYD didn't get off to a fantastic start when it comes to ownership stuff, but it has a pretty decent warranty program. Warranty is 6 years or 150,000 Ks for the car, and then it's 8 years, 160,000 Ks for the battery pack, which is competitive with the class. And when it comes to servicing, it's a pretty novel approach. There's a light service pack. If you are going to do less than 60,000 Ks over 5 years, it works out to $189 a year. But if you know you'll do more Ks than that, then there is a regular cap price service plan. The average price is on your screen now. It lasts a long time too. There are long service intervals every 20,000 Ks or 12 months, which is pretty good to see, especially if you're not going to do that many Ks or if you're going to do heaps. I really like the BYD Atto 3. I think it's a nice small SUV and a great entry point into EV motoring, and it's also pretty approachable in terms of the fact that it doesn't look like a science project on the outside. On the inside, it's a different story, obviously. But tell me what you think in the comments section below. Would you choose an Atto 3, or is there something else higher on your shopping list? I'd love to hear from you. If you haven't already, like, subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.